Star Trek 25th Anniversary for Game Boy has a fairly simple premise. You assume command of the USS Enterprise and must guide the ship through asteroid fields and space amoeba, as well as fend off squadrons of Klingon, Romulan, and Tholian vessels in order to reach your planetary destination. Once you're there, you take control of Captain James Tiberius Kirk as you slowly slough through the barren planet's surface, searching for pieces of a proto-matter weapon of some kind that is capable of destroying the Doomsday Machine, which has reared its ugly head again and is threatening the galaxy. Once all the pieces are assembled, you get to use it against the planet killer, and once it's defeated, you get a mediocre ending. Sorry if I spoiled the game for you. There are two distinct playstyles in Star Trek on Game Boy: space exploration and landing party missions. Let's start with the space exploration, which is where you'll take command of the Enterprise as you guide her through the sector of space before you. You begin on this overhead map and use the D-pad to navigate the ship on its way to the planet on the other side. When you come across a sensor icon, and you will, there's no avoiding it, the game's side view shooter segments will begin. Depending on the icon, you'll either have to navigate through an asteroid field, sloth through a giant space amoeba, or fight it out with swarms of enemy ships. Said enemy ships comprise your usual Klingon battle cruisers and Romulan birds of prey, complete with cloaking device for the latter, as well as some Tholian ships that will construct deadly Tholian webs, or in this case, walls of lasers. They both do the same thing. They try to keep you enclosed and hurt you. Naturally, your main goal in these levels are to survive the obstacles and perils before you, usually long enough to make it to the other side of this map. The Enterprise is equipped with your standard forward-firing phaser banks, as well as a limited complement of photon torpedoes, of which each shot will fire a spread of torpedoes to help clear the path. You also have shields to protect you from any hazards, and once your shields are depleted due to excessive damage, you lose a life and have to restart the level over again. Once all your lives are lost, the game is over. On occasion, you'll come across icons that will replenish a bit of your shields, and even warp rings that will allow you to skip over stretches of the level. If you manage to clear the current level, you're back on the map plotting your next course, and by the time you reach the planet, you'll have earned your password. A note on the passwords before we continue. Passwords in Star Trek are simple and straightforward, so they shouldn't give people headaches in typing out. But don't think they make life easier. They may continue from the point you left off, but they also keep track of any lives you have remaining. So if you make it to the planet with only one life remaining, the password will take this into account, and when you restart, you'll only have the one life remaining. Just something to bear in mind. Controlling the Enterprise isn't too complicated, but there's a couple quirks you need to take into account. First off, the Enterprise tilts whenever it's moving up and down, which is an odd thing considering it's a giant capital ship, and making it act like some kind of interstellar lowrider with crazy hydraulics is an odd sight for sure. But this tilting mechanism is also a means of aiming your weapons. So if the Enterprise is facing upwards, you'll shoot upwards. The same applies when you're looking down. This is a mechanic that takes a little getting used to, and is a rather mild inconvenience, but it doesn't completely ruin the game. It does, however, make things a touch harder, as enemy targets don't have this tilting issue, and can shoot straight forward and move up and down without much issue. I'm guessing Scotty was on vacation during this particular campaign. There are a couple nice touches here, however. If you pause the game, you'll get the power allocation screen where you can manage power between shields, phasers, and engines. You start off with power evenly distributed, and this usually serves your needs just fine, but sometimes you just need a little more of something to make it through in one piece. To summarize, shields determines the damage you sustain, phasers determines the range of your main phasers, and engines manages the speed of your ship. The more power you apply to any of these systems, the better they perform. But naturally, diverting power from one system means less power for the others. So while it might seem like a good idea to pump all your power to shields so you can last longer in the stage, it also means a slower ship, as well as reduced range on your phasers. And while torpedoes aren't affected by your power allocation methods, you still have a limited supply of torpedoes, and the only way to restock on those is to die. Also, when navigating asteroid fields, you'll sometimes come across planetary bodies, each of which have their own gravitational field that will draw you closer if you're within range. It goes without saying that crashing the ship into a moon is probably not something you'd want to do unless you're Counselor Troy. Wait, wrong series. And no, I will never get tired of that joke. It's a nice little touch that adds a little flavor and a bit of a curveball to your ventures through an asteroid field. When you eventually reach the planet you're supposed to go, you'll begin the landing party mission, which is generally a straightforward affair. Though your landing party comprises the trinity of Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock, and Dr. McCoy, all three eventually go their separate ways, and you're left solely in control of the captain. Your main goal in these landing party missions are to seek out the 4 pieces of the protomatter weapon scattered throughout the planet's surface. Said pieces are hidden in the planet's scenery and must be revealed by destroying said scenery with your phaser. Your best means of seeking out the pieces is your tricorder, which you could bring up by pressing start. More often than not, you'll have this compass thing that will steer you towards the general vicinity of the closest piece. Sometimes when you're near certain objects, you'll get a reading of what that object is. Sometimes you'll get messages from Spock or McCoy telling you about some hazard or some life form close by. The only weapon at your disposal is a phaser, which can be set to stun or full power. Stun merely stuns enemies after a couple hits, while full power vaporizes enemies, which would go against Starfleet protocol, but the game quite frankly doesn't care how grave your wanton violations of general orders happen to be, so have fun killing things with reckless abandon. A phaser at full setting can also destroy certain terrains, and as stated, you need to phaser things like rocks or trees to find pieces of the protomatter weapon, but a fully powered phaser uses up more energy than a stun setting, as your phaser has limited power. Be mindful of your shots or try to seek out power packs to recharge your phaser. You could also find health pickups to heal your wounds. That having been said, landing party missions are slow, plodding, almost tedious affairs. While control is responsive and functional, Captain Kirk moves at such a slow, slothing pace, you almost wish he had a motorcycle on hand so he could move a little faster. Almost. Sure, there are little bits like tricorder usage, scan reports, and occasional communications, but all 3 missions are basically fetch quests with varying hazards for you to overcome, with nothing to vary things up a bit. You'll never need to seek out a key item to unlock some section or get some device to fix things, which like I said makes the landing party missions extremely simple, but after a while the monotony starts to set in, and you'll wish for a little more variety. And no, new obstacles to tiptoe around doesn't count. Other than that, however, they're not completely terrible, they're relatively brief if nothing else. Star Trek is visually simplistic since it's a conceptually simplistic game. Nonetheless, the visuals are good enough for what they are. The view screen looks like the same view screen from the original series. The Enterprise does indeed look like the Enterprise. You can make out Romulans and Klingons and Thulians and things from the side view. Space is black, not white. The asteroids are rocky looking. The space amoeba is amoeba-ish looking, I guess. Look, as far as shmup things go, it's basic looking and it works well enough. Not visually amazing, but it really doesn't have to be. The landing party bits are pretty much the same deal. Not exactly great looking, but not bad. At least the static imagery, it looks nice in the brief instances they appear. The gauges and tricorder thingies are clear and to the point, so they're functional if nothing else. Sound here is minimal. There are some inklings of the original series scores, including the familiar theme and some of the more recognizable tunes. They're a bit off-key at times, but anyone familiar with classic Trek can recognize some of these tunes. And a weird bit, there's only music during the Enterprise segments. Landing party missions are played to silence and the sparse sound effects in the game. Not very exciting, but I've heard worse. Much worse. Star Trek 25th Anniversary on Game Boy is not the deepest, most enthralling Trek you'll find in video game form, but it is a serviceable little game that's perfectly suited for a long road trip if nothing else. The shmup portions are alright, if not a bit rough. The landing party missions are a bit on the slow side but still somewhat manageable, and the whole thing manages to capture the feel and atmosphere of Turkish Star Trek. Wait, that's not... Overall, for those wanting some semblance of Trek on the go, this is a mild appetizer that's good for a brief time killer, but those wanting a little more substance to their interactive Star Trek may want to consider looking beyond the monochrome system and into the next generation, if you will. That's not exactly what I meant.